This is a very brief setup video for my students in the current Swift class to remind them what they need to do in order to be prepared with a project in a Cloud Firestore Firebase project in the API keys for Google Places API, because in our very last class of the semester, in our Zero to Full Stack class, we are going to be creating an app called Hackathon. And by the way, if you're not in our class, but you want to follow along with the app that we're going to be creating tomorrow in class, you can find a playlist in my YouTube channel. If you just click on where it says playlists up here, there's actually a playlist for the Hackathon app. So just scroll over here to the right, and let's say, I guess it's 3 times over, you'll see it says build a Hackathon app in Cloud Firestore. You can also just go to bit.ly/hackathon-app, and that'll also bring you to this playlist. And this is essentially what we're going to be covering tomorrow in class. But for my current students, follow along the steps in this video, and we're going to do everything else in that playlist tomorrow in class. So these are the steps you need to follow. And everybody currently in my class should have received an email and a Slack message that said that you can find these step-by-step instructions in bit.ly/hackathon-app-setup. So we're just going to follow those steps right here. First up, we're going to download a logo and a pod file. Now you'll find that at this URL here. So why don't you select that, open a browser tab, paste that in. This is a Google Drive, then double click on Hackathon app files, highlight both of those files, right-click, select download, download them to your desktop, unzip the files, and you can throw away the zip. Next, in our instructions, we need to create a Hackathon app in Xcode. So let's launch Xcode. We'll create a new Xcode project. We'll name this app Hackathon. You want to make sure that you spell it exactly as I've shown, because the pod file is set up to work with an app called Hackathon with a capital H. I'm just going to save mine to the desktop and create it. Then I'm going to head into the folder that I just downloaded and unzipped. I'm going to find the logo.png file, and I'm going to drag that into my assets catalog. You can see that just gives us a logo. Next, we need to install our pod files, and while we're at it, we'll also set up our gitignore file so that it doesn't copy over our API keys.swift file or our Google Services info plist. So first, let's find the files that we downloaded. One of them is a pod file, and what we want to do is we want to copy this pod file to the first level of our Hackathon folder. Then we'll open our terminal program. At the prompt, we'll type in cd space, and I'll copy over the folder from the title bar of the first level of our Hackathon folder and press return. That should bring us right to that first level of our Hackathon folder. We can verify we're in the right place by typing in ls and pressing return. This is just going to give us a list of the files that are inside. We see that we've got a pod file in here, so that's great. Then in our instructions, we see the next thing that we want to do is to set up our gitignore file. So why don't you copy this command right here, nano.gitignore, head back to terminal, paste that in and press return. Then we can return to the instructions file. We can copy these 2 lines here, API keys.swift in our Google Services info plist file. Copy that, paste it into Nano. Then we can get out of Nano with a Control X, then Y, then press return. And let's head back, and you can copy this command here. You should know this one, pod install. Paste it into our terminal, press return. This is going to install the pod files. It took my Mac, it's an Intel Mac running off my home network, about 5 minutes to install this. So what we can do is head back to our instructions, and we can follow the steps to start to create our Google Cloud Firestore project that we're going to use for Hackathon 2. So to create our Firebase project in the cloud, once you highlight this URL, console.firebase.google.com, head to a new browser tab, paste that in. Now, hopefully you're logged into your console, and why don't you click on the Add Project button since we're going to be creating a new project. Then enter your project name. I'm going to call mine Hackathon. Then press Return or click Continue. We don't need to enable our Google Analytics here, so you can make sure that that's deselected. Then click on Create Project. This will spin, and it should create the project in about a minute or 2. Then when you're done, click on Continue. And this should bring you to the Get Started by Adding Firebase to Your App page. When you're here, click on the iOS icon. This wants some information about your project, the iOS bundle ID. So before we open up our app and get our bundle ID, let's head over to terminal and make sure all the pods are installed. They are. So you can quit out of the terminal. We don't need this anymore. And you can open your project back up. You want to make sure that you use the XC workspace file. And remember, you'll find your project bundle identifier by first clicking on the project icon. That's the blue icon in the upper left-hand corner of the project navigator. And this probably shows you everything where you need to be. So you should be in the targets area and in the general tab, and you should see something that says bundle identifier. It probably says com.yourlastname.hackathon. Highlight that, copy it, return to the Firebase console, and paste that into this field that says bundle ID. Then for the app's nickname, I'm just going to call this Hackathon, and I'll click Register App. Then on the next page, we need to download the Google Services-info.plist, so we can do that by clicking on this blue button. I save this just inside my Hackathon folder. That's a good place to put it, just in case you download this to the downloads folder at your desktop and you've already got a Google Services-info plist there. You want to make sure that the file that's saved doesn't have a number after it, like a 1 in parentheses. So you want to make sure that the file that you're going to use, the one that you just downloaded, if it does have that 1 or another number after it, just throw out any other file that happens to be in that folder. Use the one that has the 1 after it, but just get rid of the number and any spaces and any parentheses at the end of it. So it should be spelled exactly as you see here. Then you want to drag this file over into your Hackathon project, and oops, I can see that I have my project navigators all collapsed here. So I'm just going to let go of this file up top so it doesn't go in the project navigator. And I can click the expansion triangle to expose the Hackathon icon and the Hackathon folder. Then you want to drag this file over into your Hackathon app. I usually put mine right below the regular info plist that's in every project. Click on this blue Finish button. Then click Next. This page actually brings you to the page that gives you instructions on how to install CocoaPods, but we've already installed CocoaPods. Just click on the Next button here. This page gives us instructions on how to update the appdelegate.swift file. The first thing we need to do is to import Firebase. I'm just going to click on this little icon to the right here, and that copies import Firebase to the clipboard. Return to our project, click on appdelegate.swift, and I'm going to paste that right below the existing import statement. Then I'll return to the browser, and I'm going to click on the copy icon just to the right of this one that says Firebase app.configure. Then I'm going to return to Xcode, and in the first function here, I can get rid of this comment that I don't need, and I'm going to paste this statement in just before the return true statement. Then back in the browser, you can click on Next, and then continue to console, and we should be done with the Firebase console for now. So the next thing that we need to do, according to our instructions, is to configure the information from our Google info.plist, and we do that back in Xcode. Click on the Google Service info.plist. Find the third row down. It should be listed as revised_client_ID. And then in the value area, click in here so that you can select that whole text which is in here, starting with com dot, and copy that. Then we're going to return to the project information icon, the Hackathon icon that's in blue at the very top of our project navigator. And then inside targets, you want to click on info in the tab up above. And then down below, you want to open up this area that says URL types, click on the plus symbol. And then inside this area that says URL schemes, you want to paste in what you just copied, that thing again that starts with com dot, and then press return after you've pasted it in, and that's the configuration we need to do. And now in this project, we're also going to use Google Place Autocomplete. So that means we need to use an API key, and that means that we should create an API keys.swift file. And I'm going to highlight and copy this file name right here because this is the same spelling that I used when I set up my gitignore file to ignore this file. So with this copied, I'm going to head back over to Xcode. And you can put this pretty much anywhere you want. I guess I'll put it right beneath my launch screen file. I'll right click, I'll select new file. This is going to be a Swift file. I'm going to paste in the name that I'd copied, API keys.swift, click create. Then I'm going to head back to my instructions. I'm going to copy these 3 lines here, which are the contents of this new file that I created, paste them in. And I'm noticing as I put voice over this video, I pasted over import foundation. I don't think that that matters, but just to be careful, we'll see if mine works tomorrow. Why don't you leave import foundation in there and paste in these 3 lines just below that statement. Then back in our instructions document, we have to add a couple of things to our appdelegate.swift. So first, copy this GMS places client.provide API key, head to appdelegate.swift, and again in this first function here, I'm going to paste it just before return true. Then I'm also going to copy this import Google Places statement, and I'm going to paste that just below the existing imports in our appdelegate.swift file. Finally, since we're going to be using the Google Places API, we're going to need an API key for that. Now, instead of setting up a new project with a new key, why don't we just reuse the one for WeatherGift? Normally, you want to have a separate API key for every project, but since this is just an educational example, and we're only going to use this in an app that we use for one class, we'll go ahead and reuse WeatherGift. So why don't you highlight this link to the console. Now this isn't the Firebase console, this is the console for Google Cloud. Then paste that into your browser. Then up just to the right of the Google Cloud platform, you have an option to select the various different projects. So I'm going to select WeatherGift in here. If it's not WeatherGift already, select that. That'll open up this dialog box here, so click on WeatherGift. Then down here under APIs, I'm going to click on Go to APIs Overview. This brings up information for the WeatherGift APIs, and I'm going to click on the left-hand side Credentials. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the API key that I'm using for WeatherGift. So if I head over to the right of this API that's named WeatherGift, and I'm assuming that you called yours WeatherGift API key or something like that, but use whatever option you named your API key, and then just click on the little copy icon, these two little rectangles that are on top of each other. Then return to Xcode and click in the API keys.swift file and paste this in over your API key here. I'm not going to show the full API key because I don't want to have to recreate this and then update all the projects where I use this key. But finally, let's just make sure that the security for this API is set up so that it'll work in our Hackathon app. So click on the title of your API key. Mine is WeatherGift API key. Then under Application Restrictions, make sure that iOS Apps is selected. Now under Accepts Requests from an iOS application with one of these bundle identifiers, I've already got my Hackathon bundle ID in here, but just so that I can repeat these so that you can see the steps, I'm going to delete the one that I've got in here right now. I'm going to click on Add an Item, and you already know how to get the bundle ID. Head into Xcode. Click on the project icon, the blue icon in the upper left-hand corner of your project navigator. You should be in Targets, but click on General in the tabs across the top. There's your bundle ID. Highlight that, copy it, return to your browser, paste it in. The red box will turn to blue, and then press Done. Finally, down here for API restrictions, make sure that it says Don't Restrict Key. Then click on the Save button, and that's it. So you're ready to work on the Hackathon app tomorrow in class. Make sure that you've done this before class, because as you can tell, it takes a little while to set up, but we should be ready for some full stack goodness in our last class of the semester. Keep at it.